So just email me so we can organize the time. Can you see the screen now? Could you please go to question 9.21? This one? Okay. So Kim suggests us to go to 9.21, the substantive test on inventory. Okay, so here is a case, and then requirement is outline one substantive test details that will substantiate each of the potential misstatement. And for the substantive test, indicate the assertion at risk. So this question is a very easy one because the potential misstatement has been outlined here in the question and also has been listed here in the answer table, right? Okay.
All right.
Okay, so on this one, so probably you still need to read the case in 1 or 2 minutes, and then we jump to the table of the answers. Okay, ready? All right. So if the identified potential audit risk, potential misstatement is obsolete and damaged furniture fitting might be overlooked in the warehouse. So in your design of audit test, in your design of substantive test, how would you test it? So in this item, your objective is to, from the test, identify those obsolete or damaged items which has been overlooked in the warehouse. If you can go back to the lecture notes or the textbook chapter regarding inventory audit, there are a lot of examples there. Inventory count, so in stock take, right? But just so if you put in inventory stock take, information is not clear, it's not complete, so it may not attract marks. So we need to provide a more comprehensive, complete sentence here. So make it complete, attend the inventory stock take, and look for obsolete and damaged items. easy. To make it more complete, attend the stock take, select sample from the inventory list, and look for obsolete and damaged items. Okay, so what is the relevant assertion here? Assertion for this one. I think, so maybe all of us are very tired, right? So assertion here is accuracy, valuation, and allocation. So in our practice, we often just provide the accuracy or valuation, just one word, but in the exam, I would suggest to provide a complete answer. So the complete name of this assertion is accuracy, valuation, and allocation, right? So you can do the same thing actually also for the remaining two. Kim, would you also want to go through the next two? Actually, this is a tutorial question, so we have already got the answer on those, on this. Okay. So this is an example of how to answer this question, all right? So let's move back to question 4, which is about the internal control. So in internal control for part A, the question asks us to identify the internal control weaknesses and also explain a recommendation on how to overcome the weakness. Okay, so what you need to do is first identify the weakness. Of course, for each of the identified problem, you need explanation. And then you are going to further provide a recommendation. So we have done this practice, I think, in the tutorial and also in the lecture. So let's just using one example in this one. So in this case, one weakness was matching process in the accounts payable department requires to check details. What does that mean? Sorry. So I think the question means doesn't require, right? So suppose one of the weakness in the case was about the matching process in the accounts payable department doesn't require detailed checks. Require to check enough details. So you provide an explanation from the case. And then what could be your recommendation? So then your provided recommendation will be focused on checking details in the matching. So checking details. So you are going to recommend what details should be checked and then to complete your answer. Okay. So here, in answer this type of questions, so usually in one case, if they ask you, for example, to identify three weaknesses, usually in the case, they have more than three. So any identified problem, as long as it is reasonable, should be counted. But when you also further provide the solutions or recommendation, your recommendation has to be correspondent to those identified problems. That is very important. Okay. So maybe you identify a very, very marginal weakness, but as long as your explanation is reasonable, it's okay. However, when you further go to recommendations or solutions, the further recommendation should be developed from those identified problems, should be relevant. That's the thing I want to emphasize here. Okay. So part B. Part B, a very mini case, but you are going to identify the internal control activities and also identify the assertion. I just leave this question for you. So I think we covered this question in the tutorial already. So the internal control activity is mainly about the matching process. But in this matching process, it is a directional matching. That is, ensure the documents, underlying documents, are properly authorized and approved. So this internal control activity is about authorization and also approval on something. So when we talk about authorization and also approval, if it is about internal control, all of them link to one assertion. What is that? Occurrence. Okay. So once the activity is approved, is authorized, so that is to ensure the transaction is a linear, authorized, approved transaction. So it is about this occurrence assertion. Okay. Are you still following? Thank you. I think it is very boring. So thanks for following through. Okay, part C. So part C seems to be longer and more complex, more comprehensive case, right? So what has been different in the question? So in this question, you are asked not just about the weaknesses, and also you're asked to identify the problem, the strengths as well. And then based on the overall assessment to the case, you are going to assess the overall internal control. Okay. So I'm not going to the detailed strengths or weaknesses from the case, but so suppose, so you identify 1 or 2 strengths, but more serious weaknesses, and also maybe 5, 6, or 7 weaknesses. So if you got this result, and then likely, so the control risk tends to be high, right? But if in your final results, if you have more strengths, stronger strengths, but you have little weakness, like this, so your likely judgment to the control risk so will be lower, right? Suppose you in your final evaluation, you say, okay, so medium, high control risk. In this case, what is the impact of your assessment to the audit approach? So you tend to be more on the predominantly substantial approach, right? So that is actually high medium high degree of substantive tests. However, if your evaluated one is okay, low control risk, so you are going to choose that is lower assess control risk approach. So further explanation is you are going to rely on internal control. Maybe you also want to add more comments. So test control is essential, but also plus reduced, maybe lower degree substantive tests. Does that make sense? Okay. So your judgment in part B will be based on your identified strengths or problems in part A. And then you need to make your professional judgment here in part B. Okay. Question 5. Part A, test controls explains 3 controls relating to the accuracy assertion to sales and indicate the test control that auditor would undertake to test those controls. So actually the answer is in your textbook, right? So here, I have this question here. Actually, my indicates is, okay, so if you replace this accuracy assertion to any other assertions, can you do the question? If we replace sales to any other important business cycles, the like purchase, like inventory, like payroll, or like cash, or like PPE, still, are you still able to answer this question? Okay. So I think no tips here. You just need to collect enough information, know where to find the relevant information in this online exam environment. Okay. Question B. In this one, so we have identified those internal controls, and then on each of that, what is relevant accounts, what is relevant assertion, how to design the test control test, and also what would be your expected results. It is just the other way to ask for you to identify the accounting risk and also control risk, and also to design the audit test. Okay. Okay, so we can do one together. So for example, number one, okay. So let's do number one. So order prevented, if item out of stock. So that is the valid internal control activity one. So what is the relevant accounts? The sales. So if it is out of stock, so no sales will be proceeded, right? Or is this about inventory? Okay. So if you say it is about inventory, if item out of stock, so the order will be prevented. So if you say the relevant account is inventory, so what is the relevant assertion? What is this assertion here? So that will be about existence. Is that right? And if your focus is order will be prevented, so it will be about sales. What is a relevant assertion? That is occurrence of the sales. Okay, all right. So how would you do the test? I'm going to copy down the answer from the answer sheet. Just make it simpler. So how would you design the audit test? Because this test will be about the test control, and also this control is in the inventory system. So it would be reasonable for us to use a dummy order to do the dummy test, right? So by input the dummy order in the system, so the system should provide the output. There's no stock, and then order should be rejected. So that is the expected results. So actually for this question, except for the first part, these include some auditing knowledge. Actually, for the later, for those two parts, it is just from our common sense. Is that right? So for a lot of control questions, test control questions is actually from our common sense. Okay, QC. So QC here is the purchase control, test controls on the control procedures on different assertions. So like QA actually, so is this just what we copied down from the textbook or from the lecture notes? So you are going to replace the accounts or the section, purchase to sales to inventory to different places. And also you can also just change the name of the assertion to make a practice. Try to cover all the assertions, also try to cover all the relevant transactions. Okay. Substantive tests. For question A, again, I will suggest to you for all the transactions, all the major accounts we covered in this unit from lecture 8 to 10, then you just practice to design all the audit procedures on each of the assertion. Okay, so in this type of question, there might be two types of questions. One is identify one procedure. If the question is asked you to identify one procedure, then that means, so any relevant one should be okay, but I wouldn't allow procedure like inquiry, like analytical procedure. I don't like that. Please do not provide inquiry and analytical procedures if you have any other options. Okay. Okay, but this question could also be replaced. For example, identify all the necessary procedures that could provide you a sufficient provides you sufficient appropriate audit evidence. If the question is like that, what you need to do is to list all those necessary, important audit procedures. Did you see the difference? I'm talking a very important thing here. So the question could change, and then your response should also be adjusted. Okay. Please type in yes to let me know you listen to this. Okay. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Yeah. So I think for QB and QC, they are just very typical questions. Even though they are developed from different cases, the background information might be different, but so you do have those fundamental audit procedures. Of course, your answer will also be adjusted in according with the difference in the cases, of course. Okay. So here we just give you a lot of different types of questions we can ask you. Question 6, which is about audit completion or audit reporting. I'm not spending time because I think last week in the tutorial, I have explained enough on this part. We have another 10 minutes. I want to use the 10 minutes to answer how to answer sufficient and appropriate audit evidence questions. Okay. Attention. So for sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, in the lecture summary, I have given you a lot of tips. What is sufficient mean? What does appropriate mean? So if you are asked sufficient appropriate audit evidence, what are the points you need to consider, right? Please indicate yes to let me know you are listening. Thank you. Okay. So let's see the questions. Okay. So in question 8.5, question is explain the facts that determine whether the auditor has obtained sufficient appropriate audit evidence to support a control risk assessment. Okay. So when the assessed control risk is low, you apparently will need stronger evidence. If the control risk is high, if you do not want to rely on the control, you don't really need to get stronger evidence on test controls. But on the other hand, you do need stronger evidence on substantive tests, right? So that is one factor you need to consider. And also, you should consider the types and the source of evidence. What type of evidence would be stronger? Externally generated, externally circulated evidence apparently will be stronger. And also, interrelationship with other evidence, as we mentioned before. So if different source of evidence give you the same conclusion, then that will be good. But if they are giving you conflicting conclusion, then you need to expand your test, to do more tests. That means your evidence is not sufficient unless you do more tests. Okay. All right. Here, question 9.6. How would an editor normally obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding existence and conditions of inventory? So you couldn't see my screen? I'm so sorry. Okay. All right. Can you see it now? Okay. So the second one is the inventory. So how can you get sufficient appropriate order evidence regarding the inventory, existence and the condition of the inventory? Okay, so regarding existence of inventory, so of course, attending the stock take is important, right? So attending the physical inventory stock take. So in the first step, you need to evaluate the management instructions and procedures about inventory stock take. Second, you could do your observation. If you think observation is not good enough, after that, you could also add in, get a sample test. So do your independent inspection on a sample of inventory from the list, right? Regarding the existence. And then is here. So the other two will be about the conditions of inventory. The first one is, so when you do your observation or when you do your own sample test, you further look for obsolete or damaged items. Or you could also see, you inspect the conditions of the inventory. Okay. So in your answer, when you answer these questions, this type of question, so I think the very, very important thing will be about those parts. Of course, you need to attend the physical inventory stock take, unless you couldn't do that, right? Also, you need to understand what is a management policy regarding inventory stock take. Also, you need to do your observation. Further, you also need to do your own independent test. And then you could also play with your answer in accordance with different types of questions, detailed questions in the exam. Okay. Okay, so this question, let's see, okay. So explain whether the junior audit team member has arrived an appropriate conclusion. So this question is actually still about sufficient appropriate audit evidence. So the junior audit team member recorded something, get some evidence, and then make a conclusion. So is this conclusion appropriate? If the evidence has already been sufficient appropriate, so the conclusion will be appropriate. Otherwise, it's not appropriate. So in this case, it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate. Why? Because sufficient appropriate audit evidence hasn't been collected, especially about the valuation assertion. So further audit procedures need to be conducted to cover the value of existing assets. For example, testing impairment. Okay. Would you like to have a look at this question? Is this all good? So they tested the condition, the addition and disposal for the year. They also recalculated the depreciations. Then they make a conclusion. It was appropriately evaluated. However, they didn't test those existing PPEs. They didn't evaluate the value of those existing PPEs. So that they didn't also test for impairment. That's why we say they haven't got sufficient evidence, because some necessary areas of audit hasn't been covered. All right. Okay, so this is the last one, non-current assets. So still about PPE. No, so actually I copied that for twice, is that right? So it is the same question, but I just copied. So it is actually the same question. So we don't need to cover that for twice. Okay, so here we have gone through all those questions, either in details or very briefly. So I think I don't really worry about the previous questions, actually. So there will be two parts I might want to pay more attention to. The first one is, if you have a very long case, if you have a lot of information for you, a long case up to 1 page, a lot of details for you to read and analyze. And then how would you get a proper answer? My suggestion to that situation is read the question carefully, know what you are you are asked to do. So, and then to identify useful information from the case. Okay. The second one is, so nevertheless, there will be questions about sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. But this part of question could be very, very technical, could be very, very critical based on your professional judgment. So there will be a lot of different types of variations in those type of questions. So how would you deal with those questions? As we mentioned, so you need to understand the strength and also necessary quantity of the evidence. And also based on the difference in the risk assessment, you should be able to adjust the required strength and quantity for sufficient appropriate audit evidence. And also you should really need to understand the case one by one. Sometimes the trick is about the sample. Sometimes the trick is about the strength of the evidence. Sometimes the trick is about those assessed risk. Sometimes it is about the quantity of the evidence needed. Sometimes the trick is about inconsistent evidence from different sources. In some even more complex situations, there might be, for example, conflicting evidence. One is from inventory, the other one is from sales. In those complex situations, it could also creating conflicting evidence on one assertion. So I couldn't give you more direct suggestion on this type of question, but I think I would suggest you to do so sit calmly and just think the case in a clear logic. Basic for all the audited questions, they are from our common sense. So don't be afraid to do your own analysis. I think your common logic always work well. Okay. So I hope we get something from the revision lectures and tutorials. Of course, I'm not able to cover everything, but I will welcome your questions or queries. If you have any further things to us in the next few days. And also thank you so much for your company and also support in the whole semester. I know it is not easy. No, no, I'm not giving more complex cases. I think, yeah. So actually those cases are individual, but if you put them together, it is a complex case. And also in this class, can I suggest you finally just open up your camera? I just want to make a screenshots for this class. So I'm stop the sharing. So can you please switch on your camera to show your face on the screen? And I want to take photo for all of us here in this tutorial. Lane, Herman, and Aiden, could you please?
My camera isn't working. Is that
Okay,
fine?
it's fine.
Or just
Okay.
give me 2 minutes. I will exit the meeting and I will rejoin if that's fine.
2 minutes. Can you wait? Guys, can you wait for 2 minutes?
Yes, okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, just give me 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate your attendance to today's class. And also you are also, so your group is also the group quite often attending all the lectures and tutorials. Thank you. I just make the first screenshot. Okay.
Can you see me now?
Yes, I can see. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So let's take a photo. If you are also able to take photo also, you can do on your side. All right. No, I didn't do it well. Okay. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you then.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care as well.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Okay, bye, Aiden. See you.